get so mad, there's no controlling me. My thoughts get so bad, I'm like, oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay tuned for the rest of the show.
So what made that the right time for you? What was it that gave you the strength?
Oh, lots of reasons. I mean, for a start, the way I look at my life, my mother is the most sort of laid-back person you could ever find, and her thing was always "Que sera, sera." What will be, will be.
Yes.
And I take on that, so I take it from her. So there was a lot of planning in all of this route, this journey, of understanding the best time to do it, still a risk, getting things in order at home, partner, etc., getting all that on board, starting to make feelers into the industry, getting their opinion, before actually doing it. But there was never real support unless you join a group of like-minded people.
Got it.
Which is like what,
of course,
all people do.
All humans do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And whilst that's really just a group of people in the same boat, you do gather support from it, and you gather a momentum of support. I.e., if they've done it, why can't you do it? But there are horror stories.
Of course there are.
In that as well. So it's still a risk.
When I was reading somewhere that the stats on people in employment, so adults in employment who would consider themselves transgender but hide it from their employers because they are afraid of discrimination, is over 50%.
Yeah.
Which is just shocking, you know, that employers not creating an environment that is safe enough. In some ways, for me, I think when I've gone through some things, I found it easier to talk about it at work than I have at home. I would have expected that percentage to be higher in my home life rather than work. But for employers to, whether they know it or not, but for employers to be perceived as unaccepting, or that person is going to be looked over or may actually be manufactured out, or, you know.
Well, trans is, again, I bring this up because it's quite it's a good condition to talk about in these situations. So if you like, if you take kids at school, for instance, if you put them in a gym, the boys will go and, you know, have fights with each other,
yes,
and the girls will sit down and they'll natter, and that's really what happens. And so these two groups actually grow up together, and actually, why do they come together? Is to copulate. It's to carry on the species.
Yes.
It's just basic instinct.
Yep. Survival.
Men are born stronger, hunter-gatherer, and women are there to have kids.
Yep.
And the two come together to do that.
And the physicality of each.
Yes.
Lends itself to that too.
Yes. But of course we've got to carry on living with each other. So that's basic instinct. Now, in a trans world, you get moving from one to the other, or vice versa, and what you end up with is a hybrid. And that hybrid is stuck in between the two groups.
Yes.
And that the boys group, certainly, if you take a trade show, for instance, the boys will go out, you know, having quite a few drinks, and actually they want to really have a good chat with themselves and have a good laugh and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Don't necessarily want a female there with them spoiling their party.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen.
No, I know.
But it's
yeah,
you know. And the girls group for a trans person, well, do you actually really fit in? You know, because you're not. So,
yeah.
and a lot of trans activists, you know, say, "Oh, I'm a woman now." You know, great. Well, yes, you are in law if you've gone through all the rigmarole.
Yeah.
But actually, physically, you're not. And I think people really should understand that. So, how do you actually fit in then? Completely. And you don't completely fit in. You are probably more accepted.
Yes.
And it doesn't really cause a problem. But actually, are you actually part of? Well, you're not. And you're not part of the men's group. So you're this thing in between.
Yep.
And you've got to deal with that.
The word that's going around my head is isolation.
It can be. You can be isolated, and you can feel a huge amount of rejection. Because on one day, you've
fit
been
in
part
one
of that lot.
Yep. And then another.
And
yep.
then suddenly, it's gone.
Yeah.
And it's rejection. Now, everybody might be very polite about it all. Nothing happening.
No.
But it's still not that the conversation has changed.
Yes. Of course it has. Yeah.
And you
know it.
And you know it.
Yeah.
And you've got to deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I just take strength from my mum, because you don't want to get too far into it yourself. You need to keep
and I guess there's a big element there that you can't internalize other people's biases or other people's unconscious biases or their awkwardness or whatever presents. That's for them to deal with, right? It doesn't mean anything in real terms. It just doesn't mean anything other than that they don't understand it.
No, yeah, well, yes, and of course, for the person who's gone through all this, they haven't actually changed.
No, of course not.
They might look different,
yep.
but
and if anything, I would have thought you're getting the more authentic person.
Oh,
right?
you are.
You're getting the real deal. You're actually seeing someone happy in their own skin.
Absolutely.
So, for friends to not celebrate that, I find that quite upsetting. It's
well, yes, and we have to make the point that there's a lot of people who they're fine with it.
Absolutely,
But
which is great.
But it's the few who have a problem with it. But you're always going to get that.
You will always
anyway.
in every single field.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in a way, that the person who's gone through all this, they've got through it. They've now seen some rejection, because there will be. What do you do? And actually, all you want to do is be happy in your skin and just lead a normal life. That's all you want to do.
Yeah.
Now, later on, you might then think, well, actually, I want to talk about this, because I want to give something back to all those other people who are coming, making that same journey.
Yeah.
And also to the people who have rejected you, to try and educate. Because that's the only way you're ever going to make a difference. And even then, you won't.
No, you won't.
But you can highlight it, you can story tell, yes, and just try and keep the pressure on to try and make a better life.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit, I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit, I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.